Well, good morning. This is Chris Wilson with Torah and Messiah YouTube channel. Once again, bringing you Let This Mind Be in You, Chapter 4, Aristotle and Alexander the Great. This is authored by Brad Scott. And we're taking an historical study of the differences between Greek and Hebrew thought. And who knows, maybe through these narrations I'm bringing to you, you might be able to draw some comparisons and contrasts of what's being read and what we see today in our society. So, let us begin. But before we do, I would like to thank you for tuning in and being here just about every day that I bring these to you. I do work a full-time job at the same time, so I try to bring you these as much as I can. And we will be bringing back Wednesday Word Study here soon. And if there's anything that you have pressing on your mind or heart that you would like to share, please leave in the comment section underneath the video, all the way down below. If there's something that you would like to see searched out, leave it too, please. And if you like these videos, hit that thumbs up button and remember to share these and subscribe if you haven't. I appreciate you again for being here, and let us get into it. Chapter 4, Aristotle and Alexander the Great. Greece in the 4th century BC produced a second thinker whose intellectual legacy reached monumental proportions. Aristotle ranged from the years 384 to 322 in his lifetime. Plato's most brilliant follower earned his enduring reputation in science and philosophy from his groundbreaking work in promoting rigorous systems of logical argument. He taught that truth was discovered by systematic arguments based on premise to conclusion concepts. One first begins with a premise and then sets down a system of steps to come to an ultimate conclusion. The problem with this method was that it still relied on human reasoning, which was, of course, limited by human experience. The gods would not and could not supply truths, for they were simply to be idolized. This stands in stark contrast to the conceptual logic of the Bible, which we will address in a later chapter. Aristotle's religious beliefs were much the same as Plato's. The gods were still to be worshipped and revered, and excellence was still the goal, telos in the Greek. Plato was deeply critical of democracy, but only because it meant the rule of the majority, and the majority was uneducated and poor. Only the elite had the capacity to rule. Only the academies could train children to succeed. Fathers and mothers were incapable of training Greek children properly. During the years of Aristotle came the military rule of Philip of Macedonia, which was a land just north of Greece. Philip was a great conqueror, but neither as great nor as popular as his son Alexander. The main feature of Alexander's reign was that it happened so quickly. This is the primary reason why Greece is referred to as a leopard in the book of Daniel. With lightning-fast speed, the greatest mortal hero of Greece defeated the entire known world. Alexander was not only a great military leader, but was savvy and wise as well. His strategy was for Greece to dominate the world by causing the world to conform to Greek thinking. He knew that this could only be accomplished by language. He knew, almost supernaturally, that if you change a people's language, you can change their whole view of life. Alexander, because of his brilliant tactics, was revered as a god, and he considered himself to be the son of Zeus. His belief in the superiority of Greek civilization was absolute. His most treasured possession was the Iliad of Homer, and he had the plays of the three great tragedians sent to him in Asia, together with poems in the history of Philistus. They were his favorite readings. He admired Aristotle as the leading exponent of Greek intellectual inquiry, and he had a natural yearning for philosophical discussion and understanding. His mind was, to some extent, cast in the Aristotelian mold. He educated his future leaders in Greek letters and weaponry, and established schools throughout his conquered regions. At the same time, he organized traditional Greek festivals to honor the gods in the most lavish fashion. He taught that the deities made their wishes known through natural phenomena, and through omens and oracles, which were interpreted through the great speakers in the theaters and arenas. This is why Shaul, or the Apostle Paul, and Barnabas were called Jupiter, or Zeus, and Mercury, or Hermes. These were the Roman names for the Greek gods. Although Rome conquered Greece, they took upon the same system of philosophy, only the names were changed. The story of Alexander is the story of a major change in thought, so much so that he named a city for himself, Alexandria, Egypt. And the Tanakh, or Old Testament, was translated into Greek at this city. Alexander trained his successors in the Greek language. A most interesting twist occurred at Alexander's death. Instead of appointing his son to take over, he remained basically silent in the matter of who would succeed him. Consequently, his 4 top generals took over the reign of the known world instead of his son. These 4 men were Antiochus, his son Demetrius, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. These 4 men would soon divide up the known world and launch what would eventually be called the Hellenistic Age. Antiochus and Demetrius took over Macedonia and Greece. Seleucus took over Syria and the Persian Empire, and Ptolemy took over Egypt. Israel would end up being under the domain of Ptolemy. All 4 of these kings carried on the Greek religion and thought processes. Eventually, all 4 kingdoms would fall to the Romans. All 4 kings forced their Koine Greek language on their conquered territories. And as I said before, this was a very wise move on the part of the Greeks, since language shapes, molds, and defines a culture. Hate soon turns to loyalty when one changes the meaning and purpose of words and traditions. Greek had become the international language of eastern Mediterranean coastlands. Even in Afghanistan, King Ashoka, a convert to Buddhism, used Greek in his public inscriptions to announce his efforts to introduce his subjects to Buddhist traditions. Literature in these Hellenistic cultures began to shift more and more toward mythical dramas and comedies, yet worship and adoration of the gods remained as strong as ever. Human behavior and truth were becoming irrelevant, as long as the gods were pleased through public attestation. Greek philosophy in the Hellenistic period reached a wider audience than ever before. Fewer thinkers were concentrating on metaphysics, and more on logic, physics, and ethics. The Epicurean and Stoic schools were now becoming popular. This was also a result of the Greek concept of the gods. To their minds, the Greek gods were not infallible. They all had the ability to change, to feel, to give into emotions, and to vacillate. It is because of this that philosophical schools came and went as well. The bottom line at this time was how to deal with negative outside forces. So we now see the rise of the Stoics and the Epicureans. The Epicureans took their name from their founder, Epicurus, 341 to 271 BC. Basically, Epicurus believed that humans should pursue pleasure. The best way to achieve this end was to stay away from distasteful situations by congregating with friends and like-minded people. One should avoid the everyday mundane existence of the common people. Since the gods took no notice of human affairs, humans had no fear of them. The Stoics, on the other hand, recommended a different, less isolationist path for humanity. A man named Zeno of Citium founded the philosophy. Their goal was the pursuit of virtue and a resignation to fate. They believed that fate was responsible for everything that happened, basically denying free will. Stoics believed in shunning all emotion, which is the application our culture applies to that term. Through endurance and self-control, one attains tranquility. Dozens of other schools, such as the skeptics and the cynics, popped up to help explain life to the Greek world. The gods did not have the foresight to guide life in any absolute way, nor, for that matter, were they interested in doing so. This brought about the infusion of various cultic and religious philosophies in concert with the reverence of the gods. The Hellenistic age can be summed up in one word: mixed, or syncretism. Something that was wrong today might be right tomorrow. What was distasteful to one generation might soon become the banner of the next generation. And my friends, that was chapter 4, Aristotle and Alexander the Great. Our next chapter, chapter 5, is Antiochus IV to Yeshua. But as we look back and really take a peer into the ancient cultures of Rome and Greece, you know, it's interesting that we can see a lot of the commonalities between their life and what we do today, whether it's in the architectural design of buildings or the processes of Western thought through lifestyle of either Stoics or Epicurus or people today in the many religions and their belief systems. What is their foundation? That is why I believe, my friends, it is important to have a firm grasp of the culture in which the scripture was wrote. That is the Hebraic culture of the people chosen by Yah, the Hebrews, to pin down his everlasting word. and see through that lens by the men who wrote them to learn how to apply them truthfully to our lives. Again, I said this before, we shouldn't be looking at the scripture to a Christian lens or a Judaistic lens, but rather an open-minded lens straight from the Bible that shows exactly the time and place as they are writ and how they applied to them by how Yahweh foresaw that. That is, developing a relationship to Yahweh to want to be obedient to His word with no avail, but to pursue righteousness, to strive for perfection, to want to be a fellow servant and a man after Yahweh's own heart, which is something I've been studying on. What is a man after Yahweh's own heart? We can get into another teaching. But I would like to end this one here, my friends. And as always, may Yahweh bless you and keep you. May He shine His face upon you and give you His shalom. And I hope you have a wonderful week.
Oh, Israel, put your hope in Yahweh, who makes wars to cease, who tears down kings and queens. For your sake, Israel,